Good evening and welcome again to Open Minds Special. Tonight I have a very special guest, a lovely guy all the way from the USA, Juan, and he is a podcast host as well. On the pages, you'll see his bio and all his links and information. However, at the very end of this show, I will get him to shamelessly advertise himself. So listen closely. Welcome to the show, my love.
Thank you, Gloria. Thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So here we go. We're going to have a conversation. And I'm going to ask you, where did it all begin for you?
I grew up in a religious household for the better part of my life. And I grew up in that environment. And eventually, just like Neo, right, he found his awakening and he was able to break free if he chose to. And I think a lot of us have that choice to be able to break free from the matrix, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that later in life. I'm 27 now, and I started podcasting about 2 years ago. And that's when I really started going deep down these rabbit holes. And what did it for me, honestly, was learning about, I'm fascinated with theology. You know, I'm a researcher and I like reading about history. And a lot of the things I talk about is history. But people in this generation, as you know, they're more focused on this technocracy, and they're fueled by the AI that we all just willingly give our lives to. And they don't look at history. They don't want to understand it. My wife tells me, she goes, you know, I don't know what it matters. What does it matter about these ancient civilizations? And to me, it matters a lot, because these people were talking about things that we have no understanding of today. And one of the things that really did it for me was learning about the Gnostics and learning that everything that I had been taught from a little boy growing up was BS. And it was all just propaganda to fuel a business. It's all a business at the end of the day. And when I was able to start questioning things for myself instead of taking what was being spoon-fed to me, I was able to draw conclusions and open my mind up to different possibilities. And
go on. No,
I reserve my right to change my mind at whatever time. Because I feel that I'm learning every single day, and I you know, like our podcasts that we have different people on. The reason I have people on is to learn about things that I don't really know about, to have conversations about it.
I want to go back to about the history. I found that on my journey, and I'm only slightly older than you, okay? I found on my journey, when I started decades ago to look at like dimensional beings and ET, I got hit by ancient aliens, which then, even though I'd studied, you know, mythology and all, you know, Pythagoras and, you know, Plato and all that, even though I'd done that, that caught me in the history. That was an eye opener for me too. Was looking at, you know, like ancient aliens and watching all the shows back in the day, even on old school, give my age away, Art Bell, all the way through and other shows. And I was saying, I resonated. It wasn't true what I'd been told, and what was being given to me on these shows about history really resonated. It opened a door, like, you know, like we get many doors and they all open at once. You go, which way to go? But you tend to have a passion for one first, and you go down that. So it was a large door for me when I looked at history. Because when I studied mythology and the gods or the Sumerians or the Nazca lines, even, that just said, look, come on, there's no way that could happen. You've got to be up, you know, that opened a door for me. And I was able then to start looking at history saying, and recognizing not true. Did you find that as well?
Yeah, because to my personal belief is that we have been taken away from the humanistic movement, the humanism movement, right? Where we are our own gods in a sense. We are celestial beings. And it's moved on to a brokered experience to where you can only achieve divinity through us, right? And you know what I'm talking about. And that goes just way back, you know, conquer and divide. And that's where we live in today's society where we have to be divided at all times. Because I believe that I call them the reptilian overlords, and if they're reptiles or not, who knows? But I like to think of them as reptiles, as these lizard beings. And I think that they've demystified us. I think
Yeah.
that language back then was a lot more mythical than it was now, and a lot more powerful. The original alphabet only had
Yes.
17 letters or something like that. And we've added syllables and different letters in there that have no meaning whatsoever. Like in Welsh mythology, it's fascinating that we have all these different creatures and all these things. And when you talk about it, it's woo woo, right? And when you talk about it, you're made fun of. Like my friend Mark, his podcast, and my family thinks I'm crazy. And
Yeah.
it's just like that. I can't have regular conversations with people who aren't on the same frequency as me, because when you start to talk about certain subjects, esoteric subjects, they sort of freak out. They glitch out because they can't. It's like a system overload. And I think that you have to ease into that, right? When I first started podcasting, and I was inspired by Joe Rogan, right? For the longest time, I said, hey, I want to start a podcast, but I never did it. Then I eventually, because you're worried about not having listeners and not having an audience, right? But I do it for the passion of it, and getting the message out there to as many people as I can is a plus. And I just do this for fun. I'm just a regular guy, like I told you, that likes to talk about alternative thought, if you will. I don't like to call it conspiracy theory, because that was a term
thought. I
by the
love that.
CIA.
I want to pull you back a bit when you spoke about language and the language we used to speak before. Through my research and my conclusion at the moment, I mean, our truths always change. Every time you have a guest on, you expand, you learn more. But at the moment where I am, I've just recorded a show with another person, and we got onto this topic, and I said, for me, language is, I've come to understand that because language is vibration, is tones, is frequencies, it's and from alchemy, it's a spell. So we used to, as humans, it's okay, don't worry, it's life. Hi, gorgeous. It's okay.
Sorry, it's my son. He just came.
It's okay. In. Hi, gorgeous.
Papa, close the door. Go over there, please. I don't know. Go close the door, please. I'm so sorry, Gloria.
Don't apologize.
Go. Close the door, please. Can you lock it?
He wants to be on the scene. Look, Daddy's doing it. He's next. He'll be the next. Door. He's going to lock you in a minute. He's going to lock you in. And Daddy, you're not going to get out.
Go. Close. Yeah, I have a 3-year-old who thinks he's a superhero. So
yeah, well, I got that, and he just had a look right. I'm here, Dad. Honest, I've had my children. I know what they're like. Where was I? Come back, help me out, guys.
About the language and the mysticism behind that.
Yeah, and so when I was researching way back, and I learned that the language, and from quantum physics 101, is vibration, and how spells. So I know, first of all, you hear about the spells, but then I got into how we spoke before, because our thought goes into word, which is a vibration that is like a spell. And that's the law of attraction, yeah? And then when you look at the language of ancient civilizations and how it all worked, call it esoteric, call it whatever you choose, you can see then how like the manipulation or the programming of the control shifted language, banned some dialects or languages in total, and brought in British, by the way, English. So, and then you can see how, when you say some people just don't resonate or they just switch off, it's because it's like being under a spell. Because I was that once, I'm sure you were, you're under this spell, but there was something rebel in me that said something's not right. Does that resonate with you when we talk about that? I think it's an important part to raise here.
Yeah, it does. And one of the examples I can bring, my dad had a heart attack earlier this year, and he died 4 times. Okay. And me being who I am, the first thing I asked him was, I said, so, and mind you, there's not a spiritual bone in my dad's body.
Yeah.
And I asked him and I said, so how was it? Right. What'd you see? What'd you experience? And he said, absolutely nothing. It was dark. And that's why I say that a lot of people, they're not at that frequency. They're not at that veil hasn't been lifted from their eyes, because they're not open. And the biggest thing, like, for example, my psilocybin trip, right? Like mushrooms. That's the one thing about mushrooms that they are like these teachers, these ancient teachers. And on my first trip, I was so reluctant to just let the experience flow through me and
Mm-hmm.
not let the mushrooms do what they
Mm-hmm.
were teaching me something, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were opening up my eyes. And that's how people live their lives. They live reluctant to let go
Yeah.
and to just open their mind. That's the first step. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure you've talked to some eccentric individuals on your show, especially where a lot of these things that we talk about is pretty outlandish. And I'm a skeptic. I am a skeptic
Good.
100%. And I like to
Good.
keep an open
I'm a
mind.
skeptic too. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's got me
Yeah.
through this. Is being skeptical. Yeah.
And I think that's because there's confirmation bias to where you want to believe
Yeah.
100%. I want to believe in Bigfoot. I
Yeah.
think there's a possibility that Bigfoot does exist.
Mm-hmm.
I personally haven't seen one.
Same here.
But I think that there is, as long as you're open to that, who knows if one
Yeah.
day he might pop up and say hello. I don't know. You know what I
You
mean?
made it. I want to go back to the mushrooms. I have someone very, very close to me. I'm not going to name in shame. And they told me this, and they said the first time I tried it, I nearly gave away there. The first time I tried it, I wasn't in my conscious state to try it. It was with a group of guys. It was for social. It was partying, and it was fucking wild and fucking wonderful. But it wasn't. The second time, I went in with an intention because of, let's call it just paranormal experiences. You know, I went in and I didn't have anyone around me of that energy. Nothing wrong with them. That's party energy, young, yeah. And when I went in, boom, it was a totally different experience on the internal intention. And I think you've just raised that as well, which is another good point, because many people talk about, ayahuasca and the mushrooms, and it doesn't happen for me, and it does happen for another. But am I right? Because I've never tried it. Am I right in saying it goes with the intention?
Yeah, set an intention is very important. And how you said, and the mushrooms, they know
Yeah,
and when I did my first trip, it was a different experience for me because I had grown them myself and I nurtured them for 3 months, and I watched them,
yeah,
become the mushrooms that they were.
yeah,
And it was almost like this, it was like a baby of mine that I had taken care of. And when I
yeah.
consumed it, it was a time in history, right, where something happened where everybody was on high alert. It was
Mm,
very bad energy. And I
yeah,
think that when there's a reason why these ancients, the shamans were so highly regarded, and they were the only ones who were able to do certain things with psychedelics,
yeah,
because it does take you to another dimension. I do believe it does take you somewhere else where we're not that we're not supposed to be there, but if you're not prepared with your
yeah,
intentions,
yeah,
it can go wrong for you,
yeah,
because I think it opens you up to other lower vibrational
yeah,
frequency
yeah,
entities, if you will,
yeah,
that can attack you. And, that's how people say they have bad trips and whatnot. But I 100% set an intention is very important. And I'm a firm believer as well in the law of attraction. And
yeah.
when we're on these substances, whether it be DMT or anything else, marijuana too,
Mm-hmm.
it can be, I think it amplifies that effect of our
Yeah.
minds. And if you look at quantum physics,
Mm-hmm.
the metaphysical,
Mm-hmm.
that's magic. If you really, not in the sense of Harry Potter,
No,
but it is magic. If you look at quantum tunneling, quantum
real
entanglement.
magic. It's real
Yes.
magic.
Yes,
Not
yes, yes.
sci-fi or fantasy or fictional. It's real magic. However, I'm put a caveat in here. I don't recommend you do this. Um, I came into self-realization not that way. We're all going to come differently. I don't recommend it. For some it works, some it doesn't. Um, I've even heard. I mean, I only once had marijuana way back in the day. After a serious injury, and being a psychic medium and open anyway, it was given to me for pain, for personal use for pain. And within no time, there was no pain. I thought, wow, this is wonderful. And then I had a few giggles. I went into joy. And then I got hit by every dimensional spiritual being ever for 4 hours. I was ready to open. And at the end of it, when I was talking with them, they said, if you want to do this again to relieve your pain, do it, because there was no pain and I couldn't walk. Yeah. However, because of my consciousness, it will access more and more of the dimensions. And I made a decision. I can't do this shit anymore. No. It's 4 hours of someone I know writing down everything I was saying. It was way out there. So, you know, I've had that experience.
You had some strong shit, huh?
4 hours, 4 hours, because I just opened what it was. My identity got out the way totally.
Your ego
and
death, yeah.
Because I'd already been working on that through the process, and then I got all these messages for them. It was quite humorous. There's nothing wrong with this, but you may get rid of your pain, but you're not going to get what others get because you're already open. You're going to get different levels or higher levels. And it was like, I can't do it. And it took me 4 hours of that. 4 hours.
And that also one of my favorite philosophers, Pythagoras, of course, and Plato. Yeah. And Plato talked about the theory of forms. And I do think that, you know, you're talking about these higher levels, right? The emanationism, where we have the one and these different dimensions from there. He talked about how thoughts were in their own dimension, if you will. And I believe that the brain is a receiver of consciousness and not the producer of it. It's just like how you may have your computer off, but the Wi-Fi signal is always there.
Absolutely.
And I think that these substances help us alter that signal in a way to where because if you think about it, we only hear certain frequencies.
Yeah.
We only see certain light spectrums. The human eye only sees 0.0035 of the light spectrum. So who's to say that there's not a whole another world around us right now that we can't see?
Yeah, I agree. I always say what is hidden will be revealed, and where I am now, it's already here.
Yeah.
The higher the frequency, the more it's revealed. I want to go back to Plato. It was his analogy of the cave that went boom. And I remember watching. I'd read it. I'd read Socrates. I'd read, you know, from university and all of that. Done all that. But I watched this little video on YouTube way back in the day. And it was an animation of this. And I sat there, you know, the shadow on the wall and what was outside. And even though you're outside and you're still not seeing it, it's like you're hypnotized. You know, the magic is on you. That was another blind shining moment. Oh my God, it's a shadow. And then I started to call it the shadow world first before I went into terminologies. But I mean, if you go back to the ancients, they had it right in front of us. We've been reading it for decades, but no one sees what it's actually saying. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, because some people are still in the cave, and when he came back in to try to release them, they were fighting him back, and they said, no, this is what we need. This is our world. And that's where a lot of people are. Some of us are exiting the cave, but some are still there.
Especially today. No, that's not true. No. Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, let's move along. I mean, the topic of history, I mean, I could just have a 4-hour show with you, but we can't. It's about your journey. But history is a major part, I think, when you start to, for me, it's deconstructing. Because my career was criminology, I come from deconstructing everything, and a healthy skeptic as well. Even if I've experienced it, I'm breaking it down. I'm trying to find, let me see if it's this first, okay? Because a truth has to resonate. And sometimes it won't resonate with me until I deconstruct it. And then I go, yeah, it is true. Does that make sense to you? So when you deconstruct your history, each time, did you find, I don't know how to, was there an expansion? Was there a light bulb? How did it work for you each time? How did that shift you?
It was repetition, right? So I would listen to a certain lecture on something, and I listened to a lot of Manly P. Hall and even podcasts. When I would listen to certain podcasts that would talk about these subjects, it wouldn't click with me, right? It would just go right above my head because I wasn't attuned to that frequency. And then the more I would look into it, I would go back to that same podcast, and it
Yeah.
all started to click for me. It all
Yeah.
started to make sense.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. I take things apart and I reverse engineer the
Yeah.
ideas, and I look at both sides. It's not
Yeah.
just one side. I look at all sides because it's good to see why certain people see things a certain way
Mhm.
and why others see it another way.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, given society's influences, are stuck one-sided. And
Yeah,
it's
I
only
hear you.
they need to, and a lot of people in this society, they need to be, it's like they're just an embryo in a womb, and either whatever entity is controlling and
Mhm.
feeding them,
Mhm.
they don't question that
Yeah.
entity or whatever it may be. So they're stuck in this, I call it the loop, where you go to work every day, 9 to 5, you do the same thing over and over and over again
Yeah,
without any
I hear you.
results.
I call
And
it
to me, it was that.
gaslighting,
Yeah.
or the Stockholm syndrome. I
Yes.
say the Earth is in the Stockholm syndrome, and that's what it is. And to me, because that was part of my career, working with victims of crime, especially of domestic violence, and I say I perceive this matrix as the Stockholm syndrome.
Yes.
And
Yes. And
that's
that's what it was created for. And again, back to the ancients with the demiurge controlling everything.
yeah,
That's what it is, a false reality that
yeah,
we're in.
yeah.
And through gnosis, through this sacred knowledge, and
Mhm.
that's whatever it is to you, it's up for interpretation.
Yeah.
You're able to break free of that. That's why they make all these movies, Gloria. That's why they put out all these symbols and all these things
Mhm.
and that's what Plato talked about the
Yeah,
arts speaking to the people on a
yeah.
deeper
Mhm.
sense, on a deeper level.
Yeah,
And that's why Plato also wanted to eliminate the arts, right?
yeah,
Because he believed that. So, and we're
yeah. I
still
mean,
talking and referencing things from a guy from the year 300 something that we don't even know if he existed, right? And we're still referencing it today.
absolutely, and it shows you the power. I mean,
Exactly.
what I've done, I'm recently on the last month or so on when it's been appropriate on my shows or on Inception podcast, I put out a plea, and I say to the audience, I want you, because I don't have a TV. I want you to turn off your TV for 72 hours. I don't want you to listen to the radio, don't read a newspaper. And I want you to, if you need to watch something, go around with your phone and record your family life. Getting up, fighting with your husband or your wife, or shouting at your kids. And for 72 hours, stay in your experience, your truth. What are you experiencing? The laughter, the joy, if you get drunk, if you get high, for 72 hours, 3 days. Then after you've done that, if you can record it, all the better, switch that TV on. As soon as you watch, you say, that's a false reality. That's not my reality. Because,
Yeah.
and people can't disconnect. So I say, just turn it off for 3 days. 3 days. And then, well, I'm experiencing joy and happiness. There's no fear. And sometimes that can make that gap. How does that resonate with you?
Yeah, that's what Chris was telling me about when he was on my show recently, where there's a lot of different people living on alternate timelines.
Yes,
And
yeah,
nowadays everything is all clicks. And even if you don't have a TV, you
yeah.
still have a computer, you still have
Yeah,
a
I still
phone.
got a computer. Yeah, I'm still aware.
So you're connected at all times to this. I think the internet's another dimension. I think it's somewhere. I think it got out of hand for the people that made it, and it
Mm.
became its own sentient being, and
Hold
they
on,
can't
hold on. But
control
you
it.
know what I say we are? I say this little old woman in a little village in the UK. I say people like you and Chris and me, we're hackers. We're the hackers. We've hacked in and we're in the system. We've broken into the system. But I do agree. I do agree with what you're saying. How the internet has gone. But it's how you perceive things. I mean, this is a 3D reality. It's polarities. We have to have opposite. You can have, I know this sounds very trivial, but you can have fire. You can have fire and burn yourself, or you can have fire and make some coffee. Same with the internet. We can hack into the system. And as we spoke about, which we've already done, millions of us, and also as the algorithms work, And we all know, especially the podcast hosts, we all know we're starting to, our linguistics are already changing. We can't go forward with consciousness with the old consciousness we had before. So our terminologies are changing. Does that make sense to you? That's how we hack in.
Yeah, I think there's even new language being made with
Yes.
all these kids that talk these
Yes.
This lingo and these terms and this mumble rap that's coming out now. You can't even understand it, but people vibe to it, and it speaks to people, because I think it is some sort of neurolinguistic programming where it has to vibe with them, because they understand. The elites, they understand everything that they're behind closed doors. The CIA is talking about certain things that would be right, that they term woo-woo here in the real world, but they're why talk about it if it's not true, right? Why acknowledge it if it's not true?
I mean, most well, I don't know if that's true. I can't make a statement that's true, but my truth is that being aware of I call it the spiritualization of matter. So here's the matter and the consciousness, and it's a spiritualized, it's an alchemy, it's a spiritual apocalypse, if you want. And if millions, and it's billions now, of us are aware of the true self, the power that the others have, they are aware of the true self, they are our polarity, so they use it their way. But we are the counter, we are the pushback of that. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's how they get people to obey, is because of, it is alchemy, it's magic. Frequency, you use a frequency, you've got these low vibrational frequencies that they zoom out everywhere, and it does affect. I had a discussion a good few years ago with some music guys, but they were really into, I don't know what they were, but they'd come out of university and they knew their shit about hertz frequencies. And I was saying, and at that point I was going through this process, and I said, I've got all this white noise, and it's still here today. And they said, that's really good because white noise cancels out certain frequencies. I went, what? And I said, well, it's just a pitch. That's your inner self. It's a protection. And I still have white noise, but it used to be really strong. And I didn't know white noise could cancel out certain frequencies until these guys told me. They knew their stuff.
They know, yeah, exactly. It's a science, how you're saying it is.
Young guys. Yeah.
These
are young ones coming in already with this information, going straight into a field. So yeah, we've digressed slightly, but I wanted to bring that in. So yeah, get some white noise, it cancels it out. Looking at, I don't want to go too far away from the classics, because I think the history and the classics that the likes of us research and others do as well, we need to do it, and it's really important in reference to now. It is to now, because the answer that everyone's looking for is already there. Like you said, you went back and listened or watched things, and you perceived it different because you shifted over. And so can we go on to the likes of, I was just trying to think, we could go on to Pythagoras. What did you gauge from Pythagoras and the things he would speak about, apart from his blasted equation that we all had to do, hypothesis or whatever, Trevor? What did you get from that?
So Pythagoras, being one of my favorite individuals in ancient history, he believed that we didn't make mathematics, right? We discovered it, and to them, the mathematics is what makes up reality, if you will. So again, these movies that they put out, The Matrix, we have all these little numbers coming down, all these symbols. It's the same thing. My whole thing with Pythagoras was, I don't know where we got lost in translation, because he spoke about certain things that, for example, don't sacrifice animals, even if it's for the gods. Don't commit suicide. Treat others with kindness and respect. And then here we are doing these things that the elites do with the dark arts and whatnot. And I don't know where. And I think one bad apple spoils the rest, such as the Knights Templar, right? Maybe their first intention was good.
Yes.
And somebody in there infiltrated it and turned it into something sinister and evil.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that the same thing happened with Pythagoras when he would talk about these certain, he wouldn't eat beans because they resembled a human fetus,
Oh, bless.
right? There are stories of him being able to talk to animals and being able to communicate with animals. And there was a story where I believe it was an ox. It wouldn't get up, and the farmer was frustrated, and he went up to it, and then all of a sudden it moved, and the guy was like, "Hey, how'd you do that?" He goes, "Oh, he was a friend of mine in a past life. He
Oh,
was my cousin or something like that." So he believed in reincarnation.
yeah, yeah,
Supposedly they did divination as well through
yeah.
different methods. So, mind you, the guy that we attribute the Pythagoras the theorem and all these different things that we know about mathematics today, and
Mm-hmm.
even maybe perhaps numerology. Some say that he didn't create numerology, but the symbols, the monad, the
Yeah.
one was to them
Yes,
was
yes,
God.
yeah,
The
yeah,
duad, right? You have all
yeah.
these different
Mm,
numbers that to them that was sacred to them. His cult, right? It was a cult.
yeah.
They understood that reality was made of numbers. And again, these are ancient mystery schools, and there was an initiation. I believe you couldn't speak for 3 or 5 years in order
Yeah,
to be able to even be present
yeah.
in front of Pythagoras to even begin to hear him. They had to study calculus. They had to study everything
Mm-hmm.
before they would be able to be initiated into this
Mm-hmm.
cult
Mm-hmm.
and learn of this sacred knowledge and these esoteric beliefs that they practiced.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know where we got lost in translation from, hey, don't kill yourself, to, hey, he also said if a man is able to destroy even one grain of sand, one grain of sand, he will eventually destroy himself. We're way past that. I,
Oh,
I
I
think that
mean,
we are a cancer to this world. That's just
yeah.
my
I mean,
personal
I
opinion.
know, I hear you. I mean, with research I've done and on the sacred knowledge or secret societies way back in the day, obviously it's very similar to what's going on at the moment with censorship. When it rose, they kept it secret because obviously they would be killed, tortured, annihilated, and it would have been, changed, whatever. And eventually, each time it rose its head, it was destroyed, normally by religions. Or well, at that point, I'd say definitely religions was the ones that, even the story of this man Jesus. Um, if you there's a thing called, we got it in the UK. It's called the Red Letter Bible, and it's just his sayings. So if you just want to look at the sayings, but as you said, when you go back after research, you see things differently. But then you look at the story, you can see how it was changed. It was this, like he said, you are the gods. You are the gods. The heaven you seek is,
They became one of us in
yes,
Genesis. They have
yes,
become like us. It's like, who
yes,
is us? You know,
yes.
who
Exactly, the gods, and it's all in there. And so what they had to do, because he was a rebel, like most podcasters are today, especially that Chris Matthew. He's definitely a rebel.
shout out
um
to Chris.
yeah, is they had to suppress it, they had to change it. So, and I remember I've spoken about this before. I'm asking my peers back in the day when I was studying comparative religions, hold on a minute, this man said, you're saying he's God. They said, yeah, God incarnate. And then I would say, like, okay, but according to scripture, the Godhead got this mud and this clay and this bits and breathed himself into it, life. They went, yeah. I'm killing this, by the way. I can't remember what I said as a child, but it was like this. I said, well, then I'm God.
Yep.
You will go to hellfire every time. And the other one, how was he created? It was an immaculate conception. An archangel Gabriel come down. Now, when I heard that before even self-realization, I said, that is impossible. There's no way. The only way you can have, and I'm a mother, the only way you can have a baby, well, you can have artificial now, but you know what I'm saying, is by sex. A sperm and an egg come together, and that's a baby. So I even had an issue then, and I would ask that, well, no, it can't be. Oh, you're going to go to hellfire again. So I was constantly being told,
Going to hell.
hell, what the hell, exactly. And it wasn't too like later now. I actually did a podcast a couple of last month with a lovely Fay Vale, and we went deep when you don't go. I said, I've got to do it. And I said, my God, this man, Jesus, was a hybrid.
Yes.
He was a hybrid. And it so relates to my experience of contact and the guests on my show, hybrids, and, oh my. So then you can go back in history again and you can see the whole story is there if you have the eyes to see, as he said.
And it's not, Gloria, it's not just that story. That story has been told over and over again with different people and different characters. And it goes back to the Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yes,
and
same story.
All these ancients, the Zoroastrians, where it's the same story as in the Bible. But I went recently into the history, the occult history of the King James version of the Bible.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who was writing about demonology and talking about how the use of demons and these lower vibrational entities is for the further glorification of God. He talked about werewolves, vampires, witches, magic. And this is the guy who authorized the copy of the King James version of the Bible. But yet there are some hardcore KJV people only that revere, and I go, how we talked about before, set an intention. What if these guys were some sort of magicians and you're just furthering that intention for them and furthering that
you don't realize
message?
You don't. And you can see that's what's happening is you don't realize what you're doing. It's like a spell. It's like, I suppose another analogy for the audience, if you're getting slightly lost, is, like you see a hypnotist, these entertainers on a stage, and they can get someone to believe they've got no clothes on or something. And they've hypnotized them. It's magic. It's human magic. And they believe it. It's very similar to that. You are told something and it's hypnotic. And sometimes frequencies can do that. So be careful what you listen to, in music especially. And they believe it. And so then they pass that on. And I'll say, for example, then they have children and they pass that on to the children and the next into the community. And that's how it goes. And why we say breaking the illusion or hacking into the matrix, whatever label you need to call this, is because it's deconstructing it now. It is a form of play. It's an illusion. It's actually not the real reality that is right in front of you as the observer. It's not what you'll turn the TV off for 3 days and you'll see real reality. You'll see, which is only your experience of what you're having. Yeah.
You touched on two things there that I talk about a lot, where these ideas, and I believe in the Akashic records. I think the Akashic records is probably the human DNA, where back then some ancients were able to tap into that and they're able to pull any information from any point in time, whenever. And when you said that these beliefs are passed down through, it's been proven that fears of certain things, right? And we have the skinwalker, the wendigo, whatever you want to call the chupacabra, whatever. These things are able to be passed down through genetics. So if you have a person who's indoctrinated their entire life and they have some sort of offspring, they are passing that down to them, and then they're living they're raising their offspring in the same conditions that they were raised in. So you have this vicious cycle over and over and over again. And I do believe that these ideas are passed down through genetics, and it's hard to break free from that, because one of the things that I've always thought about with my son is, somebody asked me, so what are you going to teach him? Right? I grew up in a religious household. My wife did as well. And I said, I'm going to pass the tradition down, because I don't think that all religion is bad, right? I don't want to paint that picture. I think it's a good, healthy handbook and a user's manual, if you will, on life, and it makes you a better person. So I'm going to pass that tradition down to him. And when he comes of age, maybe it's a late awakening like me, and he starts to question it, then I can help him and be like, hey, listen, I had the same issues too. This is what it is. And that's why throughout my entire career, if you will, of podcasting, it's just been that. If you listen to my very first episode that I ever did versus my episodes now, it's like two different people.
Absolutely.
Because it's just changed me throughout. And it's been proven that frequencies can change things on a
Yeah,
molecular level, like
yeah,
somatics and all these things. And I
yeah.
think all these conversations and just opening up
Hmm.
has really just opened my mind up, and I'm able to think outside the box. And when I watch movies, I look for the symbolism
Yeah,
behind it,
yeah, yeah.
and I break it down, and I'll tell somebody, "Oh, look, this is what this means." And then they go, "What? This is just a movie." I go, "No, it's deeper than that. You got to look at the deeper meaning, you know?"
I mean, I'm going to go back to your son, the superhero. I don't
Mhm.
think you're going to have an issue. That look when he looked at camera, lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, I have a son who's my superhero. He always was. He was a right little shit when he was little. He won't mind me. He's still a little shit, but however, and he come in knowing somehow, and he just knew, and I could tell. And with my children, I used to say, you be what you want to be, especially him. And he just come in knowing. And I know there's children, I worked with children and families for a good few years, and I would meet like 4 5-year-olds, yeah, come in knowing. And there's one where I had to speak to a little 5-year-old. I will not give any details out under Data Protection Act, but I can relay the narrative. And this 5-year-old was pulling her hair out. So I was asked to sit with her as a family support worker and have a conversation. And the parents were across the room. This really got me. So I walked into the school. The parents and the child was in the classroom waiting for me. And as I walked in, the parent said, "She has drawn you a picture. We've told her she's meeting you." Now, I've never seen this 5-year-old in my life. And I sat down, the parents were away, so I could have a private conversation under child protection. They could see me with their small child. And she put down the picture. Oh my God. I looked at it and I was like, oh shit. And she said, "Now, these beings come at night in my bedroom. And it's an angel, it's a dimensional being." And she had it all in the beautiful picture. And she said to me, she said, "Mummy don't believe me. Mummy don't believe me." And so we got onto, is that
Wow.
why, So I've experienced that. I had it myself as a child, but through the years, I kept seeing more and more and more. And I'm children today, I'm telling you, you've got no problem. You can bring him up in your tradition, but he's already set to go.
Yeah.
He's a superhero.
I believe that children, and the reason that they're targeted, and I read this book, I
Mm,
forgot the name. It's the astral realm, its inhabitants,
yeah.
something like that, and they talk about the auras of
Mm,
people,
yeah.
and that children, the aura that they emanate is pure. It's more pure than anything because they haven't been indoctrinated. It gets to a certain age where these ideas start to
Yeah.
morph them, and
Yeah.
they lose that. And I remember when my son was smaller, he would look up on the ceiling and start talking by himself.
Yeah.
And I go, "Oh, he's probably just seeing something that we can't see because
Yeah.
they're just so pure and innocent."
They're just the observers.
Yes.
Source.
Yes.
They are the gods. And I had another discussion the other day with another guest, and we were talking about um he calls it the baseline. We're going back to the baseline where we can look at a tree. We don't label it tree. We just see. We take the labels. There's the alchemy. There's the spell. We've been told it's called a tree. And once we do that, we name something and label it. Boom, we're back in the illusion.
Yes.
And we touched upon, and I'd mentioned about children. They are the gods. They just observe. They have no name. No, even when you got your baby, it doesn't know I'm its mum. It
Mm-mm.
just senses food. That's
Yes.
so you're quite right. And children, and again today on another podcast, where just all I do is shows, and I've got nothing better to do with my life constantly. We were talking about the indoctrination of children, how to suppress again, and it's done by magic. I mean, people say, how is that so? Look, they are still teaching in UK today. They are still teaching in the schools the same shit from the 1940s. Same.
An
World
interesting
War,
time in history, the 1940s.
yeah, not well, and then everything about Hitler. It's just Hitler. All we hear is Hitler. nothing else. They've taken away creativity. They've taken away every single thing you could think about that would be, the child would become creative. PE has become like boot camp. You know, you don't do it, you get punished. It's a boot camp, not an option. You know, do you want to do physical education or not?
I think that with what happened in the world in what was it, March of last year, I think that by them locking us in and prohibiting people from doing the things that they love was another it was part of the plan, because if you just strip away what people love doing the most, some people don't like being indoors, some people like fishing, some people
Yeah,
like mountain biking, some people like the outdoors, and I think that that brings joy to those people, and by you taking away that from people, I think it just put them in a more subordinate sense of being, where I think they were more malleable to be able to just take everything in and do as you're told, and don't question the authority, and this is the scariest thing ever, and just that constant state of fear. And it's been proven that if you're under stress and under fear, your cortisol levels come up, and that can mess with your immune system and do all these things. And I think it's all part of the system and part of the narrative. And if people, my show, I always tell the listeners, I go, don't take what I say for certain. Always do your research. Always Google everything I say. And I've gotten things wrong on my show, and I'll go back on another episode and be like, hey, I'm going to correct myself. I said something wrong last show. This is the real thing. And that's why you should always question anything that you know what I mean? Anything that it may come to.
I agree with that. But also I come from another, I'm in a juxtaposition. So the identity and consciousness, and I saw also the lockdown as a benefit. It backfired big time. And I have witnessed, I'm in a different timeline. I'm not in that timeline, but I still to this day witness, people you think there's no way they're going to wake up, or forget the wake up. There's no way they're going to see what's going on. And then boom, they had to be pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. Have the first, have the second, have the third, then fuck off. I've had enough. Boom. Yeah.
Gloria, this is the way I see it. And part of my awakening was that it's one thing to know that you're in a game, right? And it's another thing to not know you're in a game. I don't know if you've seen the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds.
No.
It's a newer movie that came out. I suggest that even if you don't watch movies, to watch it and just watch for the symbolism in that movie. Yeah. But it's one thing knowing that you're part of the simulation versus not knowing. And when you know it, you're able to play the game along, and you're able to stay in it and have fun.
Yes.
Versus the guy next door who has no idea what's going on, has no care to know what's going on, because that's how some people are. And you have to respect that, right? Whatever brings you joy or whatever's going to bring you stress, because a lot of the things that me and you were talking about, it can stress somebody out. I can be one of them. It does drain me. And there are times where I need to take a break, because you're just taking in so much information and you're processing so much that you need to just unplug, disconnect. I do sensory deprivation, right? I unplug and I meditate and I do my own thing, and then I'm ready to go back at it again and just spread truth. My whole thing is just spread truth in a comedy way. I have a real relaxed show, and I don't take myself seriously, but at the same time, I'm spreading messages of certain subjects that some people might not know about. And a lot of people have messaged me like, oh, I didn't even know about that. When I looked it up, it ended up being true. And I go, well, that's the thing. Know your history. It's what I tell people. Know your history, study it.
I think history is a main thing at the moment on most of the podcasts. It's coming out a lot and it's obvious. And we all seem to be doing it at the same time. Talking about, I do what I call grounding. I live in silence. I'm in a little village. There's nothing. They're all dead, I think, actually, to be honest, but no, never mind. And I just sit in silence and I connect in the silence. That's my grounding. And then I come up, I do a bunch of shows of different things. I take it in, take it back to the silence, and go in the silence. And that's an energizing. And it's true. I always say to anyone watching the show, if something resonates with you, take it and go with it. If you get excitement, if something doesn't at the moment, just put it to one side. Leave it there. You've got nothing to lose. But always remember, you've got choice. No one chooses what you should do. You are an autonomous being. And even if you're not aware of the magnificence of your being, at least as a human being, in that context of an identity, you've got free will. You have a choice. No one can force you to do anything that doesn't resonate with you. There's your first step.
I have a friend of mine who's an ex-evangelist who's been on my show a couple of times, and every time I sit down with him, we talk about, and mind you, ex-evangelist. So he was in that world, making a living from it. And one of the things that he always told me was, no matter what in the Bible, every story has the deeper meaning, and a majority of the stories have the message of wake up.
Yes.
Wake up, wake up. And he said something on my show the other day that really just blew my mind. He said, what do you think about, we are humans being, not human beings. We are humans being. You take that as you will, but I think that we have to, ride our own path and stay the course in whatever way. And for him, he said that he would keep pulling at that string until it just kept unraveling. And unfortunately for him, he's not in that realm anymore. And I said, isn't that a bad thing though? Because you're not furthering their message. And he goes, that was my awakening for me. And I go, so even, and he says, God, Jesus, whoever he may be, he changed me forever. And that was maybe my plan, even though it was to take me out of that world and put me on some other path or whatever it may be. So that's why I always tell people, stay the course, because you don't ever know what could come of it. You know what I mean?
No, I'm in total agreement with you. I mean, bringing, this is a segue to bringing the show to a close. There's another area I would like to bring in here, something that me and Chris, we spoke about a lot, and we're doing another show, I think near the end of this month, one of my shows. And I've got this analogy I'd like to offer out. I haven't used it in a while. And I want you to imagine two chess players. And I say they're Russian because, they're master chess players. And the 7 moves left. And one knows it's lost and one knows it's won. Now, the one that's lost is just going to drag it out again and again and again. And the humanity's watching this and going, oh my God, and all the suffering and trauma, and and it's an illusion. But we've already done it, guys. We've already succeeded. And even if you want to go to Project Looking Glass, there's another one for you. And I want to lift the show up before we end it on this context. How does that resonate with you? I'm in a different timeline. We've already done it, and what I'm witnessing is just a bit of scraggy ends at the end of it.
I think that regardless of the fact, all it takes is one pawn to take out that queen and win the whole game. So I think if we stay the course, we could be that pawn that eventually takes out that queen and wins the game. Yeah. And I think that we're in our lifetime, we might see some sort of spiritual awakening that's going to really be the nail in the coffin for the entire system that we know doesn't work.
It's right? Crumbling. It's crumbling before our eyes. And, as I said, I don't have a TV now, but if I go on my iPad and to go somewhere, obviously it comes up with music and it's crumbling. Yes. It is just crumbling and the more that consciousness, the awakening, whatever terminology, increases, the opposite energy, which is supposed to do, we're in a polarity here, gets harder, and then it's firing at us one thing after another. Stop. But the hackers are in, and I think the hackers were birthed here just for this. The hackers were birthed here just for this.
I agree. I think we're all Neo trying to find that truth and break out of the matrix.
Exactly. And for me, the game's over. That's just my truth. The game's over. I have now connected in the past 6 months with other Neos, and you just know when you connect with them, and you just know it's done. You know it's done. And obviously there's another aspect. If I make this truth statement that I consciousness, I'm having a human experience, or I'm the observer, okay, the identity is non-existent, then your consciousness, you're me, yeah, and everything's me, even the arseholes are me, just on their journey. I was an arsehole once, I maybe still am an arsehole, who knows? Don't ask Chris that, don't ask him that question. But what it is, if I consciousness have done this journey for self-realization, then all goes.
I'll leave you with
nothing
this, Gloria.
separate from me. Sorry?
I'll leave you with this, and you can think about it. The Gnostics talked about in the upper eons the watery light, and when you are able to transcend to the upper eons with the one, the source, whoever it may be, there's a watery, they call it the watery light. And when you look in that light, I see you, you see me, the angels see you in their own reflection.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I am you, you are me, we are all one. And
Yeah.
again, we're in this system that makes you think otherwise and makes you look at race, identity, ethnicity, gender, whatever it may be. And we're all the same. We're all the same. And that's something that I've always talked about. And that's why it pisses me off that people bring race into certain things and all that. And I think it's all BS. And I think that we should just embrace ourselves and be the humans that we are, and just
be yourself. I mean, when I talk to you, any guess, when I talk to you, I'm talking to myself. I'm self-realizing.
Yeah.
I'm self-realizing more and more. Why do you think we're me, and we're like, in the Matrix, I think it's 2 or 3, when Mr. Smith multiplies, but it's one.
Yes.
That's all us, but with different masks on. So I'm self-realizing. All I'm doing is self-realizing.
With different intentions.
Absolutely. So, for me, the game's done. It's all good. I tell you what, we've got to end on a high. I told you it'd be a fascinating conversation, and it was, and I'm going to have to bring you back in the new year, definitely. And I really would like to go, we could do, I'd like to go deep on Plato or Pythagoras and more of a history,
Whenever you'd like, you let me know.
Yeah, I will do. Revisiting and looking at things, if you want to do a presentation, you can, we go back and reread something and we see it in a different light. I really love to do that. So before we end this show, sell yourself shamelessly. Go for it.
So you can find me. My website is thejuanonjuanpodcast.com. You can find me anywhere on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, The Juan on Juan Podcast. And my podcast is available on all platforms. I talk about subjects that we talked about today: consciousness, esoterica, fuck, I forgot the word. Anyways, the exoteric, right?
And
the esoteric, and so you can find me, and I have a lot of guests. It's an interview. Sometimes I do solo shows on there, and I do sort of presentations like that. And you can find me anywhere. You can reach out to me on my website, my email, whatever it may be. And I want to thank you again for having me on. And I did have a lot of fun, Gloria, and this was a great conversation.
It was a great conversation. And on that note, guys, thank you for watching Open Minds. As I say at the end of every show, please share and subscribe this out. It's not about Gloria. It's about getting the guest message out there. Someone may want to hear. Let's get this out there. Also, I've managed to get a backup channel called on Rumble. However, I'm not technical and I can't get the name changed. So it's under Gloria 313. All Open Mind shows I've started to put up on Rumble. Go to Gloria 313. Please like and subscribe, because there's different audience on Rumble. Some people don't like YouTube, and I'm not surprised at the moment. So they're going to alternatives. So they're not accessing the guests that come on. It's all free. It's all free from me. So please, Gloria 313, please like and share. It's on Facebook. Open Minds Chat Show, Open Minds. And then I'm on Facebook, Gloria Canning, and my wall is just for the shows. And also there's Inception Podcast. Get it out there. Let's share this. Thank you. It's been fantastic. You've got to come back. We're going to do a few more of these in the new year. Until the next time. Thanks for watching, everybody. And thank you, Juan, so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Gloria.